The best workers are those who achieve more in a fewer hours. So, welcome, ma'am. I hope you're doing good as well. So,
I
as a
am.
host, I, Nandini, would like to warmly welcome each and every one of you here today. And it gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm hellos to each and every one of you gathered here today. So, it's a huge honor for us to have someone of this caliber here whose involvement on the topic of remote work and productivity. So now I would like to share a few lines regarding a topic. So remote work can significantly impact productivity both positively and negatively. While it offers flexibility and reduced commute time, it can also lead to challenge like isolation and difficulty in maintaining work-life balance. Ultimately, individual productivity in remote work depends on factors like effective time management, strong communication skills, a supportive work environment, and a clear work life boundaries. So, before I proceed further, let me take a brief moment for the introduction of our organization. So, SEMS Welfare Foundation is a registered non-profit organization and it is dedicated to social impact across various sectors. Here, we focus on education, particularly skill development and entrepreneurship. So, through our initiative, DG Saksham, we have created training programs in IT, finance, retail, and entrepreneurship impacting over 6,000 individuals. And Fame Lead is another initiative of our empowers women through workshops and the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. In just a short time, SEMS established itself as a force for positive change, equipping individuals with skills for employment and promoting women's leadership in various industries. So now let me take this wonderful occasion to publicly present and welcome Ma'am Nigel Fisher, the speaker for the today's international webinar. And
Thank you.
here I would like to share a few lines about our speaker. So she is a seasoned HR leader with a proven track record of driving organizational change and improving employee experience. So, with the focus of strategic HR initiative, she has successfully led global teams through mergers, acquisitions, and cultural transformation. Her strong leadership skills combined with a commitment to DEI enabled her to build high performing teams and achieve significant results. So, ma'am, your presence has added to the significance of this event today. And on this note, I, Nandini, on behalf of Saints Welfare Foundation, extend a warm hellos again to all of you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the warm welcome and the opportunity to speak to you guys today. I see a couple of good mornings in the chat. So, good morning to all of you. I am in the United States today. So, it is 10:30 at night. So, it is good evening to me. I am the type of speaker. If you have a question, I want you to post it in the chat. I will try to see it. We have a couple of moderators in the group. If I don't see it, they'll wave their hand and let me know. If you feel like I don't see your question and I'm talking about something that you are interested in, please wave your hand. Do not hesitate to interrupt me. So those are my ground rules. And other than that, please follow the ground rules that our wonderful host has shared. And at this point, we will just get started. Before I ever speak to the group, I always show this meet the presenter slide, and hopefully you guys can see everything really well. If you can't, again, wave your hand and let me know. So I am Nigel Stokes Fisher. I have been an HR business partner by trade for over 15 years, more years than I really would like to say here. I have worked for some of your favorite organizations. DFW Airport is the eighth largest airport in the world. I worked for pharmaceutical companies like Allergan, Aurinia, AbbVie, and they have some of people's cosmetically some of the most favorite drugs in the world. Botox is one of them, you may know, which is manufactured in the west of Ireland. There are also ophthalmic products and a host of other products that they manufacture for the wellness of individuals. I love HR. Or else I wouldn't have done it this long. I have done DE&I initiatives for the Veterans Administration in the U.S., helping doctors better relate to patients and their patient community, especially when they differ in terms of economic backgrounds. I have done DEI initiatives in corporate environments. So I think I'm probably a pretty good resource to talk to about remote work and some of the challenges that people face. Um, in that environment. So that's it. We're going to jump right in, and I am going to start this by letting you know that remote work, as far as I'm concerned and the rest of the world is concerned, it's a fairly new concept. Prior to 2019, the onset of the global pandemic, remote work did not really exist. It was roughly 5 to 7% of workers in the US, and globally, even a lesser percentage than that, somewhere between 2 and 4% is what statistics would say. So the global pandemic was really the catalyst that said, oh my goodness, everybody's in panic mode. What's happening? Disease is spreading, and it's not just disease. In people tried to say, I believe Donald Trump called it the China virus. It wasn't just a China virus. It was a virus that was affecting the entire global world. So every country was impacted. And at that onset, you started to see people say, wait a minute, we got to figure out a way to safeguard our people, but also run our business. And businesses truly decided to do a lockdown. At the time of the onset of COVID-19, I was in Europe and experienced what it was like to be locked down. I believe that the US process differed slightly, but there were still a lot of lockdowns, a lot of mandates for masks, a lot of mandates for separation and spacing, depending on what you were doing. And again, it was really COVID-19 that brought us to the point where 18 months after the onset of the virus, we saw the statistics jump to 42% of US employees were working remotely, while 40% of workers in the EU were working remotely. So, where we are when we think about the prevalence of remote work and where we are current day is that as of right now, December 2024, approximately 30% of US employees still remain in a remote environment, and roughly 28%, between 25 and 28% of employees globally are still working in a remote environment. Most of those folks have gone to what we like to consider a hybrid approach, where they're working for a few days at home and a few days in the office. I believe around 10% approximately with the survey still work fully remote. And what you'll see as I flip through the slides is a lot of the technical organizations have adopted a policy in regards to remote work. And those are going to be your Googles, your Apples, and your Microsofts. With other organizations, while they went to remote work as a response to COVID-19, they haven't quite figured out where they're going to live yet. So the statistics say that the world still wants to mostly remain in a remote environment, with 40% of employees saying, yes, I want to work from home all the time, and 33% of folks saying, no, hybrid is good because I need interaction and camaraderie with my coworkers. And then we have the unknowns, about 12% of people who don't answer and respond to surveys, and another 18% who say, I would prefer to go to the office. So that is where we are currently. When we talk about, our host kind of alluded to some of the same things that I'm going to say, which is the impact of remote work on productivity. If you think about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, okay, when you think about the surveys that are coming in current day, the ones as recent as October, what we understand is there's a great concern that two things. One, there is no reduced productivity for people working remotely. The statistics don't say that. And that is a huge takeaway to help us kind of ground us and move into more of this hybrid shift that we are seeing. But one of the issues that we do have is that people tend to suffer from burnout or isolation, or we fail to collaborate when we're working remotely. And I'd like to say that I believe the reason for that is because the office is now home. There is no longer any separation between church and state, if you will, and that you can go to the office whenever you like. Your computer's on your desk. If you say, oh, I thought about something, I need to get this out, just go to the desk, log in, and it doesn't matter if it's after business hours or if nobody else on your team is working at the time, you can still log into Office and tap into work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So with that, we're seeing that people have blurred boundaries, that they're not instituting healthy practices in terms of their mental health or their well-being, because they're thinking that the priority is work, and they're kind of losing sight of themselves. With that said, it doesn't mean that remote work does not work. What it says is that the conclusion should be that we need healthy boundaries. We need to implement our goals and set the ground rules kind of like our host did, and make sure that we have clear goals, clear systems, and we're communicating that regularly to our employees. I hope that makes sense to everybody. The other thing is, when we look at the positive impacts of remote work, we see that there is a huge reduction in workplace distractions. I worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing before, pre-COVID, and people would walk into your office, people would walk up to your desk. You would walk out and walk to people's office, you walk to their desk. And so what we saw with remote work is that there's no loss because there are no desks to walk to. We're not picking up the phone and calling people and chatting. We're not walking down the hall. We're not going to places where the snacks and the water and all of that are. It is greatly reduced because now the snack place is your own kitchen, or your own office, or the little refrigerator, because people sought to kind of separate themselves in during the pandemic, and they thought, okay, I'll place everything I need right here so I can just sit here and work. And we've seen that mentality actually prevail in this time, like I say, which has created a bit of the blurred boundaries that we talk about. And again, we want to make sure that if you are working in a remote environment, that you set healthy boundaries for yourself. One of the things that I do want to point out is, again, that we're seeing this surgence of hybrid work that is starting to dominate a lot of industries in tech. A lot of startups are taking that approach, but some of our existing companies, you will see that we have companies that are actively in the US that are resisting the transition to fully remote or to hybrid. We have organizations here current day in Dallas where I sit who are asking employees to come back to work. Some of these slides I'm going to flip through because the work is a bit, the data is a bit repetitive, and I want to make sure I get to the points that are going to be super beneficial, whether you're a leader leading a remote team or whether you're an individual contributor who's working in a remote environment, right? I believe that some of the issues that the business would have, it's particularly important to leaders, is to understand that flexibility is a major factor now. At this moment, employees know that, hey, they kind of know who they are, whether they're thrive in a remote work or whether or not they need the camaraderie of the office. And so you're seeing people say, one of the surveys that came out recently on LinkedIn as an RTO return to the office mandate suggests that 14% of organizations are losing their top talent because of their inflexibleness around remote and hybrid work. I do believe this. Each situation and each individual is different. I believe organizations should try to farm out a policy that supports both in-office work and hybrid work if it makes sense for their industry and for their business. But we should not just kind of take a one-size-fits-all approach. When you look at organizations like Microsoft and Zoom and Apple and Google, you can tell that they can thrive in those environments. But the work that I did in Europe and in the US is mostly in manufacturing. So obviously, I cannot create a vaccine at home. I have to be in the office. The other thing is that I cannot look at the quality of the vaccine or the manufacturing process at home. So there are going to be some industries who are going to remain office based or manufacturing site based. And we just need to keep that in mind, that this is not a one size fits all and it cannot apply to every industry. Okay. So when we think about the employers and what they're saying about remote work, right, is two things. It's a cost issue, and then it's the talent pool, tapping into a talent pool. The other thing is, for the organizations, is on the flip side of that, conversely, it's a cost issue and it's a talent issue. So the issues are the same. on both sides. It's particularly for organizations who had real estate pre-pandemic, and you'll see that in these slides again, which I will share at the end. So now, when we talk about how are we going to make remote work for the organization? And again, it doesn't matter if you're an individual, if you're a team leader, or you're looking at this for your organization. The first right step is to set the proper boundaries. What are your expectations from your employees in a remote work environment? And then what should the individual be doing if they're remote based at home to create a space where they thrive in this environment? One of the first things I'd like to suggest is that you create a dedicated workspace. When you went to the office, when you have gone to the office in times past, you had a workspace. If you're a student, it's no different than having a desk. You have a workspace. So when you're home, one of the things you need to do is carve out a space that is just for remote work. It doesn't need to be a community desk. It doesn't need to be a family desk. It needs to be a place that you have set aside just for your work. The second thing that we need to do to kind of reduce the chances of feeling isolated or burned out or feeling like you are an army of one is to make sure that the collaboration tools that the organization provides, right, that you utilize those. I know everybody's sick of apps. I myself sometimes get in that space where it's like, I do not want another app. But Slack, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, the chat features that some organizations have set up that are unique to them, those things are super important in keeping you connected to your team, keeping you connected to your manager, and helping you focus on how to be a remote worker and still maintain a part of the collaborativeness that is required when you work as part of a broader organization. The other thing for managers that's super important is to create regular check-ins and to do things like send out flash messages to the entire team. Around this time of year, we'd be talking about year-end priorities, things that were important. Guys, I know you're all remote, but don't forget about here are the due dates that are coming up, and making sure that you centralize a place for communication. As an organization, we need to understand that we need to offer some flexibility to our employees. We need to think about purposeful in-person collaboration, meaning it needs to be purposeful and thoughtful. If we're having employees work remotely, we don't just want to take everybody and bring them into the office for no reason at all, right? Make sure that you're doing something that's both stimulating and has something to do with the work, and there's some benefit for your employees that you're asking to travel. The other thing is to make sure that we have robust training processes for managers to lead in a remotely distributed environment. It's super important that we still maintain our training, that we still maintain the touch points that are needed to let employees know that they are valued and they're still part of a larger organization with a broader mission. So that said, that is kind of the introduction to what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. At the end of my presentation, I have amassed some survey results and some statistics that might be interesting to you. Some people will have some interest, others will not, but I will share those with the group at the end of the presentation. But what I think is extremely important is that we walk through 11 practical tips for how to thrive in a remote work environment, right? And these are practical tips. And I want to say this, every solution does not work for everybody. It is not me telling you to go out and do all 11. I'd like for you to consider them and then take away what works for you. Do the things that resonate with you and that are important for you, creating that balance between work and your home life. Right. So the first thing is, again, I told you guys to create a dedicated space. My presentation tells you to set up a quiet space for it to be well lit with minimal distractions. Don't like a quiet space. I typically have music playing in my workspace. If quiet doesn't work for you, feel free to add music or your favorite TV show or podcast. I believe that that environment needs to be comfortable. So a wonderful chair, and then everything that you need, your essential work tools, your laptop, your chargers, your notepads if you use them, if you're a highlighter person, or if you're a pencil and not a pen person, do the things that makes your space comfortable and unique for you, that create an environment where you can thrive and stay focused. And again, the next thing is going to be maintain a routine. I have a slide in here that tells you about a timekeeping process, right? Where you block off 25 minutes of your day and work on one task for 25 minutes, and then you take short breaks. And there are two methods to maintaining your routine. That is one. The other is time blocking your calendar. I'm a time blocker. 25 minutes for some of the things that I work on is usually too short of amount of time. And then there are two frequent breaks for me. So I typically block my time in 60-minute intervals or 50-minute intervals, sometimes in 120-minute intervals, depending on what I'm working on. But I think depending on your independent work style, you need to create a schedule that creates structure. For some of us, that's going to mean waking up and saying, all right, I'm going to have breakfast at this time. I'm going to check my personal email and do this at this time. And then I'm going to start my day. For other people, we are going to jump up and say, all right, I'm going to start my day taking time for me and then jumping right into work. And then around lunchtime, I'm one of those. I'm going to grab my coffee, make a small snack, and take some time away then. So make sure you do what makes sense for you. Incorporate a ritual. Our host started off with a great positive quote. It can be a positive quote. Again, it could be an excerpt from your favorite podcast, but make sure that you maintain a routine that allows you to be successful and that it is unique to you, that it's not what Nigel said, it's not what you saw. Another expert said, because everything does not work for everybody. So this is your opportunity to be unique and create a system that works for you if you're working in a remote environment. The other thing, and this is going to sound very crazy to some people, they're going to say, what is this lady talking about? Get up and get dressed for work. You are going to work. In some instances, you're going to be on a Zoom, and whether you turn your camera on or not, getting dressed for work helps us put on our coat of professionalism, right? It helps us unrelax our environment and get into work mode. Avoid staying in pajamas. Avoid staying in your loungewear. Avoid opting for something that's super comfortable and super casual. I am not telling you to put on a suit in your home office, but I'm saying get up and get prepared for the day. And whatever that means for you, business casual attire, something that you know will help you switch over into work mode, do that, because it makes all the difference in the world in the way that you show up and the way you interact in professional environments with your peers. Minimize the distractions, minimize the distractions. I know the fact that we're in a remote environment allows us to kind of say, oh, I can just keep my cell phone, or oh, I can talk to my sister, or oh, I can just do this for the kids, make a doctor's appointments for the kids, call the dentist, or whatever those things are that you normally do, order groceries for the house. But I'm going to tell you that time blocking your calendar and preserving that separation between work and personal makes all the difference, again, in the way that you show up. And it also makes the difference in your productivity. If you can do things that either add the noise that you need or cancel the noise if it's a distraction, right? That's essential. For me, I'm at home, but I'm going to put on my headphones because I don't want to hear anything else when I'm working. I want to focus and give my full attention to what I'm doing. The other thing is when I'm in a meeting with my peers, I want to, at that point in time, mute everything because I want to make sure that I stay focused on the meeting and the task at hand. So it's super important that you, one, dress for work, bring your best professional behavior. And the other thing is minimize the distractions and not get caught up in saying, taking that ADHD approach to working remotely from home. And I know some people will say, well, why do you say that? But I say that because it just doesn't work. And people start to notice that you're not present. And the whole point for remote work to work is that you still have to maintain a presence of being in the office. So make sure that you're not doing those things that kill collaboration and professionalism. The next thing I would say is use the productivity tool. Use your calendar, right? Because we're in the digital age and there are a ton of tools to choose from, pick the ones that resonate with you. Choose a calendar that's shared honestly, professionally, and personally, if you can, so that you make sure that you balance your time. You make sure that whether you choose the shorter time blocking method of 25 minutes and then a break, or you do the longer time blocking method of anywhere from 60 to 120 minutes on task and a break, make sure you're doing the things that you need to do to remain productive. The other thing is some jobs, like I say, will use Slack, they will use Zoom, they will set up independent groups for your team in Microsoft Teams. Make sure whatever that tool of choice is that the organization has chose, that you leverage it in your communication with your teams. Sometimes I've seen, because I've worked internationally and lived abroad, we will tend to try to make our own teams originally in a remote work environment. We thought, oh, we'll just create a WhatsApp group. It's a bad idea. And I say that honestly because it takes away from the organizations, the tools that the organization has chosen to use. So if you do communicate with your employees, with your fellow peers, and your employer in a WhatsApp group, make sure that you transfer those messages over to the proper channels, which are either, again, Slack, Teams, Toggle, Trello, whatever it is that has been chosen by your organization. Please make sure that you use those so you guys are communicating with what we like to say in the US is one band, one sound. The next thing is super important to do, and that is to set clear goals for yourself and prioritize tasks. If you're a leader, you got to make sure that you communicate deadlines. You got to make sure that you communicate things to the team collectively as a group. But if you're an individual, my thought is that you need to project manager yourself. You are now your own asset at this point. When you're working remote, you are responsible for you. You're responsible for your daily output. You're responsible for your productivity. Our host said it's not about being busy. We're not here to be busy. We're here to be productive and effective. And if you can do it in less hours, that's always great. But make sure that what you're doing is adding value to the overall goals that your manager in the organization has set. And when I say that, I'm going to tell you to plan your days. Again, if you utilize tools like the time blocking on your calendar. Today, Nigel is reviewing a contract with a third party vendor. Today, Nigel is writing all of the communications for our performance management year end process, and I'm getting those out. The next thing that Nigel is doing with those is sharing those with our senior leaders in the organization and making sure that everybody has agreed to the approach for communication with the broader organization. And those things are super important. Nobody else is going to tell Nigel, you go do this right now. You need to do this right now. So if you're not telling yourself that, if you're not writing out daily and weekly goals, if you're not using some type of project management tool like a matrix, right, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to kind of take a scattered brain approach, and you're going to answer things and be more reactionary and respond to hot seat items instead of moving through your responsibilities in a more focused, right manner. And that's super important. You need to be focused on the end outcomes, because at the end of the day, it's all about your output. Because remember, your employer can't see you. They can't walk into your office. Nobody's going to say, hey, what are you working on right now? The other thing that you need to know is when you set clear goals, and you might have goals that are shared across your peers, you able to say, hey, could you get together? Could we get together tomorrow at 2? Is that good for us to work on? Or can we get together later this week? Do you have the bandwidth to meet and talk through what's going to be due, or what we're going to be communicating as a part of our year-end process, or as a part of our audit processes, things like that. So make sure that you're leveraging these tools to also stay connected and to work through your goals, not as an individual contributor entirely, but to also leverage the help and the insight of your coworkers. Now, you guys are very quiet and you have no questions that I can see right now. If you do have questions, make sure to put them in the chat, because I love to talk, but I also like people. I also like to talk back. So, number 7, take regular break. This is going to mean different things to different people. I am a longer break type person. I had the opportunity, like I said, to work abroad. And so typically breaks were a little bit longer than midday, and people did them as a group. You can do this like that, or you can take that approach where you're working 25, 35 minutes and then taking 10 minutes for yourself, either to refresh your water or to refresh your stack, or just to take a meditative moment, if you will. Listen to your favorite podcast, read your favorite quotes, or write in your journal. But I think one of the ways that we prevent the burnout that's often associated with remote work is to set up a break schedule that resonates with us. For me, I'm going to do it at 11 o'clock every day. I believe that is lunchtime, and I want to spend 11 to 11:45 doing things for me. So that works for me. Again, if you need a shorter time and you just want 10 minutes after every 35 minutes, then take your breaks like that. The reality is that you are your own manager. As I say, you are now your own asset. So you have the ability to structure your breaks in a way that makes sense. Again, the Pomodoro technique I told you guys about, that's 25 minutes and a 5 to 10 minute break, depending on what you do. No more than 35 minutes of straight work with that technique, but time blocking will allow you for longer times if you have tasks that require a greater focus and obviously just more time to complete, and they're not suited for start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. I would tell you this, during the pandemic, when I was in Ireland, what was super important, we got 1 hour a day outside in the original lockdown. And where I spent my day was 5 a.m. walking out on the promenade, right? Just listening to the ocean, just focusing on me and my day and this crazy world that we live in. If it's important for you to step away from your desk, to stretch, to walk, do those things that make sense for you. If you have a coworker who also likes to walk and you guys can chat on the phone or say, hey, I'm going now. Are you going? Take your time and come back. Do that. Do what makes sense for you. Because the wonderful thing about being remote is that you get to cultivate the environment where you thrive. And it's basically set up around your preferences. So you have all the control you need to be successful and do the things that resonate with your work style. The other thing that I've kind of stressed throughout this conversation is please, please, please stay connected to your team. We don't want to get in a space where we feel isolated, or you start to feel like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I have to carry this on my own, or I have no one I can call, right? Schedule a check in. If you have a favorite coworker, do a virtual coffee moment. I love those. Just say, hey, this is a moment for Starbucks and catch up, and we're going to talk about nothing work. We're just going to talk about how are you doing, how I'm doing, what's your priorities, maybe for this week from a personal perspective. Are you all ready? In the US, we'd be saying, are you all ready for the holidays right now? If you're in the Northeast, you might be saying, are you prepared for the snow? Do you have everything to keep your family safe and resources in your house? But make sure that you're connected with your team in the same way that you will cultivate those relationships in an office, that you're doing those things in the remote work and virtual environment. The other thing is put your clothes on again and schedule video call check-ins with your manager, with your team. Turn your camera on. I'm not saying you have to do it for every meeting every day, but it's important that you turn your camera on and you see people and the sheer emotion of the team just getting together and the camaraderie, so that you can feel that energy, because we benefit from the energy around us. So you can tap into that collective energy, the happiness, celebrate a win. We as a team completed a big project. We met our deadline, guys. This is so good. So make sure that you do that. The other thing is be proactive in the communicating process. Don't wait on people to come and ping you. Make sure that you ping people as you need to. And sometimes folks just need to hear are you okay? How's your day going? What you got planned for today? Do you need any help? How can I assist you? Make sure to lead with those things with your teammates, because it'll create the sense of connectivity similar to what it would be like in the office. And I hope that makes sense for everyone. Now, I said this, alluded to this in the previous slide, manage your energy, not just your time, right? Whenever we have things that are super challenging, and we don't know where to start. I had a friend yesterday, I believe, she called me and she said, I've got a busy day and I don't know where to start. And I said to her, just start and you'll sort yourself out and you'll feel your way through what you need to be doing. So the important thing is to bring positive energy. And if you're in a space where you're not having the most positive energy, make sure you tap into connection with your peers and collaborate to get yourself on track. Utilize your energy. It says reserve lower energy times for routine or less demanding tasks. So if you know that you're going to have a day where, okay, this is going to be pretty routine, you don't have to be high energy. But if you have a day where it's going to be challenging and you know you're going to need to bring your best self, I am going to suggest that you turn on the music that you love, play it, sing it, do whatever you do. And it doesn't matter if it's off key. That's fine. It's just you. Get yourself pumped up and excited and happy about the day ahead. The other thing is that a positive quote, spoken words, go a long way to help us define the way we're going to act and the way we're going to feel. The other thing is, if you have a favorite motivational speaker, you can pull in some of their words, podcasts, and all of that. And I would say, if you have a big day and it's going to be challenging, refrain from listening to the news, because I feel like there's a ton of negativity there and not a whole lot of positivity. Not saying turn it off forever, but just to get your head in the space where you can work and thrive and tackle the day with your best self. The other thing is stay hydrated. Water is super important. If you have a favorite cup, bring it to your desk, fill it with water, ice, or your favorite beverage, green tea, and make sure that you tap into all of the things that help you stay connected, that help you stay focused, that help you keep your mind on the things that you need to do. We talked a little bit in the beginning about boundaries. They are super important. Make sure that you set those up. I like to think of when you're working remotely, I like to tell people that you need to date yourself. One of the things that you do is you carve out time in your schedule for the boundaries that you set. Again, a podcast, a quote, something that you love to listen to, a song. Make sure that you take some of those 5-minute breaks and focus on just you. Step away from the work that you're doing, get up from your desk. I don't care if you just walk around your kitchen island or you go and just pour yourself more water, but get up, take a break, walk away from the screen, and for 5 minutes, focus on yourself and make sure that you're not just sitting at the desk for hours on end. 2 to 3 hours in a chair at a desk is bad on everybody. It's bad for your back, it's bad for your body, and it's bad for your productivity. Because just like you sit there and you say, oh, I'm just going to do this, do this, do this, you're also going to crash, crash, crash. And what we don't want to do is be responsible for our not so great selves showing up. And I mean, whether it's the crash, whether it's having an attitude and becoming short and snappy with our coworkers, we need to be responsible for the energy that we're putting out. And we need to make sure that we set ourselves up again for success. The other thing is, if you start to feel creaky and you're sitting in your chair and you start to squirm, things like that, make sure that you get up and stretch. It's not recommended that anybody sit in a chair for multiple hours, 4, 8, 6, 2. If you have an Apple Watch like I do, it has a reminder to stand every hour on the hour. At about the 50-minute mark, it will tell you to get up and walk around. Set yourself a stand goal for the hours that you're going to be working. It's a great tool that you can use to actually get up and take a break from what you're doing and break up your thought. And our last tip is embrace the flexibility. One of the great things about remote work is that it offers so much flexibility, meaning you don't have to be online unless your employer mandates it at 8 o'clock. If you need to take a later break and say, oh, I'll come in this morning at 9:30 and I'll work to 6 or I'll work to 7, you can absolutely do that with your manager's approval. If you need flexibility, just in general, in your approach to the work, make sure you have that conversation with your manager and say, I am going to cover from 9 to 1. I'm going to take a break from 9 to 3, which is something that they typically do in Europe. And I'm going to come back and finish my hours after that. For myself, for some folks in the US, they might sit in a central time zone, but decide to work the West Coast California time zone hours, meaning that they will have a later start and a later finish. And you can do that to balance the team, so long as it doesn't bother the team dynamic or it doesn't propose any issues to coverage. But just make sure that you're keeping yourself in that space with flexibility. You also have to balance it with accountability. Make sure that you're meeting your deadlines and you're doing the things that your team and manager expect you to do. With that said, and I think in terms of practical tips, that kind of sums up my practical tips on working in a remote environment. Remember that you are your own boss, that nobody is going to manage you at the desk, in your home, at your house. And you have to be accountable, but you have to be productive. And the other thing is, you have to set proper boundaries for yourself, because I don't know what it's like to work with you if I'm not sitting next to you. So you are the leader in terms of determining what are the best practices for you. The key insight that I do want to highlight moving forward, particularly in the US and organizations here that we're seeing, is the hybrid model is what has emerged as the best practice for now. We still have folks who work independently, and they may do so. Maybe they're in architecture, maybe they're a designer, maybe they work in technology, and they can work from home by themselves. Maybe they're a project manager, and it doesn't require that they're with their team all of the time. But for businesses that are based in the US and others globally, they're kind of deciding that the hybrid approach makes sense, meaning sometimes you can work from home and then other times you can come in the office and socialize with the team, because they're not wanting to lose the culture that they worked so hard to create. They don't want to lose the high performance piece that we've worked so hard to implement and create among our teams. So just make sure that you keep yourself open to the fact that the landscape around work is changing, and we haven't yet set a solid space in terms of the direction that we're going outside of the prevalence of the hybrid environment. Future trends, right? Things that you see. I believe that we're going to see better technology that's going to come out to help us collaborate better in a virtual and a remote environment. The other thing is, I think that we're already seeing an increased focus on mental wellness, mental health responsibility. I believe organizations are relaxing their standards as it pertains to that and are focused on how to keep our employees remote, for those that enjoy it, but also keep them healthy, keep them from feeling isolated, keep them from feeling like they don't have a team that they can rely on. So I think you're going to see increased checkpoints. I know some people will be rolling their eyes like, Jesus, I'm tired of talking to you. But the reality is that it is the employer's responsibility to make sure that the work environment that they've created, whether remote or in person, right, works for the betterment of their employee. So you'll see those things pop up, and make sure if you're invited to give your opinion on those things, that you do participate and that you do share insights and things that you've learned. I think for every person who works remote, they find what works for them. The one thing that you can't take for granted is that the person who's remote also on your team knows everything about what's going to work for them. If you find something that is great and you're like, oh my God, this is so great, this is a godsend, I should have been doing this 6 months ago, make sure you share it with your peers, because you don't know who needs the insight you have, and you can't tell whose insight you need. Key conclusions and takeaways, right? Remote work has really no noticeable decline in impact on productivity. If it did, it would have went away long after, immediately after the pandemic resolved. People would have said, come back to work. The other thing is that we figured out that employees can absolutely say for themselves what works for them. They know what is the best strategy and practices for them. We found that people have thrived in this environment. I personally have friends who work 100% remote all the time, and them and their coworkers meet up on the weekends. They do a weekly lunch or a monthly lunch because they want to stay connected. So remote work is not a reason to say, oh my God, we're not connected. People are as connected as they want to be, and you need to keep that in mind if you're going to work remotely, or if you're considering working remotely and going into that full time, that there are ways for you to stay connected with your coworkers. And it's not all that you have to do everything by yourself. You still have a team of folks to rely on and that can help you meet your goals when you need it, whether it's just challenging or whether it's just really overwhelming because of the sheer volume. The other thing is that you got to balance flexibility and accountability, and you got to balance that with your teamwork. Make sure that you're always incorporating your team and you're talking to them, because you don't know who's at the same place that you are, and you don't know, again, who needs your help. Last thing is that we're going to see a culture shift that focuses more on employee wellness, employee well-being, and that I believe is going to push employees to say, no, take time off to rest for yourself. The other thing is that's really it, is that you are in charge of you. So you know when you've hit your limit, and do the things that make it possible for you to work remotely and thrive. And make sure if you're struggling that you have that conversation with your manager. Don't do it in a hole by yourself. Make sure that you're forthcoming and share the things that you need to make you super successful. There are other statistics at the bottom of this presentation, guys, and I'm not going to share them here because it would be kind of redundant. But I do have my LinkedIn profile up. And if you would like to connect with me, around this or have a conversation offline, there is the link. You can scan it, the QCR code, and send me a request, and I'd be happy to connect with you. I appreciate your time today, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak. If you have any questions, I am at the end of my presentation. You can add those in the chat, and I'll respond to them. But other than that, our wonderful host, if you'd like to take over at this time, you may do so. Okay. I don't see any questions coming in. I'm going to leave this up for a few more minutes, guys. I appreciate the comments saying excellent presentation, superb session. Thank you so much, Dr. G, for your comment. Guys, if you, like I said, if you think of something that crosses your mind, you can absolutely, in my LinkedIn messages, ask anything. Nigel, does this work? Nigel, what do you think? Absolutely do that. Thank you so much. Reach out to me. I am not one of those who won't accept your request, and I'm certainly not one of those who won't chat with you. And I'll also add a Calendly link in case you need 15 minutes to vet your own situation. So thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful morning.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this. I have a one question, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to ask, like, how can a person like support his or her mental and emotional well-beings, like being a remote worker at the same
I
time?
think one of the things that's super important, again, create a routine that works for you. You started off with a great quote, right? If you need a quote, do that. If you need a podcast, some days I'm a song person, honestly, other days I'm a podcast person. If there's a quick, and I say this because we have them here, a yoga class or something like a Orange Theory where you can work out for 25 minutes in the middle of the day and break up your day and it doesn't bother your routine, you can absolutely do those things to maintain your mental health because it takes your mind off of work and separates you from what's going on with the work. But you've got to create really good habits, great snacks, a lot of hydration, and a lot of cultivating the environment where you thrive.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for addressing this question. So, on behalf of this organizing committee, I like to express my hearty vote of thanks to our excellent speaker here, ma'am Nigel Fisher. And today we got the opportunity to listen to a fascinating and thought-provoking discussion on remote work and productivity. So, she
Mhm.
masterfully shared her knowledge, leaving us with an valuable insights and inspiring ideas as well. So her interesting presentations captured our attention and motivated us to learn more. So we appreciate the effort she put in preparing this enlightening session. And additionally, I would like to extend my thanks to everyone, the participants. So all the good things must come to an end. So I consider us all fortunate to have been a part of this workshop, which was rich in knowledge and it was a learning.